I'm Richard with EV4U Custom Conversions, and welcome to the first episode of the EV Answer Man for 2013. In the bed of the pickup here is a 2006 Yamaha Rhino, and we're going to take a look at the Rhino in this episode and in future episodes in regards to converting it to electric. So we will go through the entire process. We will look at it, calculate gear ratios, figure mounting locations, all that type of thing. And so in this episode we're going to introduce the Rhino by going over its current condition as it came from the factory, a gasoline powered ATV. So we'll pull it out of the truck and do a walk around, open things up, and take a close-up look of how it is today. And we'll talk about the plans for converting it to electric, some of the things that we want to consider in doing that, and some of the things that need to be considered in doing that. And we hope you'll join us. Alright, let's do a little overview of the Yamaha Rhino. Basically the original side-by-side sport utility vehicle. I believe it was introduced in about 2004. This is a 2006, and it has quite a few accessories on it, and not all of them from Yamaha. Matter of fact, I don't think any of them from Yamaha. But anyway, over the years they've basically offered three renditions of this. The 450, the 660, and the 700 fuel injection. The 700 fuel injection was introduced in 2008, which meant the demise of the 660, which was very popular with people that like to modify and race them. I'm not as involved with the Rhino community anymore, so I don't know how popular the 700s are. But today the real popular side-by-side is the Polaris Razor. It pretty much, in this part of the country at least, is by far the most popular. But the original and the long-time leader was the Yamaha Rhino, and it is still probably the best hardcore off-road ATV there is. It just is a very rugged vehicle, well engineered, well designed. And so we're going to use this one for a platform for a conversion to electric. One, for the reasons I just mentioned, the excellent design and ruggedness of the base unit. And the other is, I already own this one. This belongs to another company that we own, which, among other things, manufactures aftermarket products for the Rhino. And many of those are featured on this particular unit. This was our test unit. This is a 2006 450. And so we'll do a walk around. Then we'll open up the hood and remove the engine cover and so forth, and take a little closer look. Alright, this is the 2006 Yamaha Rhino 450 that we will be featuring in this conversion, in this
project this year, Project Rhino, and you can see it has turn signals. It also features flashers. And the turn signals are mounted in such a way that they're protected. This Rhino has an aftermarket bumper on it, has a remote control rear winch, has a reverse light, a thermometer on the dash, temperature gauge on the dash. It has a digital tachometer. It has our heater. You'll pull for heat. It has an electric horn. It has musical air horns, and it has an air horn off of a semi. So make lots of noise. Custom made rear view mirror, driving lights that fold up and can come down. We leave them up when the windshield canopy is in place. This windshield canopy is all contained within the roll cage, so it doesn't catch on anything going down the trail. And we offer this custom engraved cowling. It also has a winch up front, bed rails, a storage trunk, spare tire mount, and plenty of room in the bed for other things as well. Also has a switch here for controlling the front winch, and there's also a wired remote for the front winch also. There's a lock box. This thing was not given a real good bath last time it was out, kind of dirty. And so that's kind of the overview. The Rhino features what they call their Ultramatic transmission. Has excellent holdback power when you're decelerating or descending a hill. It has positive traction rear differential, has push button four-wheel drive, and then push button lock, which locks all four wheels. And this baby can climb. It's amazing where you can take one of these things. So let's pop the hood and remove the engine cover and take a look at a little more of the innards. Forgot one other thing this particular one features that was offered on the 450s and the 660s from Van Wyhe's Custom Engraving were leg warmers. So you flip the switch on the dash and hot air comes out from the engine compartment over your legs, and you can have it on the driver's side or you can have it on the passenger side, or both. And so both have this nice little grill right there, as well as the heater, which is ducted here under the dash. So this one keeps you nice and toasty. The windshield canopy keeps the wind off of you, and then heat is blown into the passenger compartment. Works quite well. Alright, let's open it up. Okay, here's the view under the hood. The Rhino came with rack and pinion steering. This particular model has front disc brakes, and then it has one disc for it's on the drive shaft to the rear differential. And anti-sway bar, independent four-wheel suspension. And so from a conversion standpoint, we should have room for batteries, possibly right in the area kind of where the motor is now, pretty much in the center of the vehicle, as well as outboard of the motor, under the driver's seat right here. Just storage on the passenger side is where they put the fuel tank. If I remember correctly, it's a 7.9 gallon fuel tank. And this is the engine and transmission all in one case. The 450 is a real misnomer. It's actually 421 cc's. Why don't they call it a 400? But anyway, this is what they called the 450. It's a carbureted single cylinder, used in anyway. So there will be room once that unit is removed. Should be room for an electric motor and batteries, and so we will calculate how much room we need and so forth. This Rhino right here, the stock curb weight is just over 1,000 pounds. So we will see, how much weight the engine removes, and see if we can't build something that's in the 1,200 pound range. Right now, this thing fully loaded, I'm guessing we're about 1,300 or so. We've added quite a bit of weight to this one. I got quite a bit of survival equipment in the trunk, and so anyway, heavier than stock. So we will calculate the gear ratios. We'll take a look at what kind of tire size is going to work for us and so forth. We'll take this out for a spin and see what kind of RPMs it's doing at different speeds, and just get all of our base information that we'll want to use in calculating the electric configuration. Rhino actually has a nice bed on it. It's good size. If I remember correctly, it's a 400 pound payload in the bed. It's like 1,000 or 1,200 pound towing capacity. And the tongue weight, I want to say, was around 120 pounds. So the rear differential is offset, so that would mean that our motor would have to be offset, or at least it appears to be from here. Yeah, I think it's offset more to the driver's side, and that means that her motor, if we go with a direct drive, will have to be offset also. And so we'll take a look. This has factory shocks on it. They're adjustable. I want to say they're set at one of the lowest settings. I want to say. I have to take a look at it. Yeah. So we can up the shocks. If we increase the weight, we could increase the springs on that. And I said that wrong. I didn't mean the shocks are adjustable. The springs are adjustable. And so we could up the springs. Give us a little firmer ride, but also keep our ride height. In the front here, they're one off from the lowest setting. This being the lowest setting right there. That's the little piece that this steps on here. So we can increase that if we needed to or wanted to. All the electronics and the battery all are in that compartment right there. So it's I think it's a doable endeavor and might make for some interesting investigation here into the feasibility of doing this. We'll make sure we take lots of measurements. And so in our next episode, I think, kind of depends on the weather, we'll take this for a spin. We'll take it off-road. Like I said, we'll see what kind of speed we get out of it. Like I said, we have a tach and the speedometer right here. And we'll take a look and see what kind of speeds we get out of the different gearing. The Rhino came with a 2-speed basically. It's got neutral, high, low, and reverse. So we got, you know, high range and low range, and you can put it in 4-wheel drive and lock the differentials in either of those positions, reverse, high, or low. But we'll be losing the gearbox, and so we won't have a high and low, but we'll have good old torque from an electric motor. And so I'm thinking on this one that we should use a AC motor for the regenerative braking. The regenerative braking will give us a nice vehicle for you know, descending hills and so forth, when you don't have to rely on the brakes, but you can use the regenerative braking for going downhill. Ought to be a nice feature. The main consideration with this type of vehicle in my mind is the environment. This vehicle has been in water fairly deep, almost to the top of the snorkel here, and maybe I'll include a picture because I do have a picture of that. It was over the wheels. And the other big issue is dust. Here in Northern California we get some pretty high temperatures, and we have a lot of months where we have a lot of dust. And so that's a big consideration on, you know, anything that you do. You want to make sure that it's going to be able to handle the elements, and so we will definitely be keeping that in mind in the development of this project. So, and here's the back side of the gas tank. You can see in there we've got a void when the exhaust comes out and so forth. We'll have some room where we can put some cells, and we'll see how much room we need, and we'll also do some measuring. We want to keep the weight displacement centered as much as possible. That's one of the beauties of this vehicle. It has the engine in the center here, and so it keeps the weight front to rear really nice, which is important when you're wanting traction in slippery conditions. So let's move into the shop and we'll talk about the Rhino a little bit more. As I've mentioned before, when doing any conversion project, it is always a good idea to have the vehicle manual. And I'm kind of a stickler for that. Any vehicle that I own, especially those that are purchased new, at the same time I purchase the vehicle, I purchase the factory service manuals. And this is one of two manuals that I have for this particular vehicle. And very quickly you can see the benefit of having one of these. If you do any of your own servicing, I mean, the manual pays for itself right away. And even if you don't, it gives you insights on the vehicle and how it works to make sure that whoever you take to do the work knows what they're talking about and they're being honest with you. So we can turn right here. It gives us the general specifications, and like I mentioned before, this is a 421 cc engine. The overall length of the Rhino is 113.6 inches. The width is 54.5 inches. Overall height is 73 inches. Wheelbase is 75.2 inches. Minimum ground clearance is 11.02. And minimum turning radius is 153.5 inches. And then I was a little bit off on the weight. The basic weight with oil and a full fuel tank is 1,105 pounds. And so we want to stay close to that. I'd like to stay 1,200 and under. We'll see what we can do by removing the engine and transmission. You know, this is a liquid-cooled 4-stroke single overhead cam engine. It's a single cylinder. It's a 10-to-1 compression ratio. Electric start, wet sump, so forth. Now, we're going to do some calculating in another episode. The wheel size, and we'll see for every revolution of the tire how far forward we go and how many revolutions the input shaft to the differential turns and so forth, as well as we want to know the direction that it turns and all that. And so we'll be taking note of all that. What's in there is a combination case that houses the gearbox and the crankshaft and everything for the motor, and they're tied together with a belt, and then from there the output is by a drive shaft to both the front and rear differentials. Um, and so it gives you all the specs. I mean, this gives you anything you'd ever want to know. Another nice thing about this type of manual is it gives you all of the routing information for the cables. Gives you all the cable routing information. Just anything you'd ever want to know. And so that's, that's a great tool. Could be a great time saver when we're trying to trace things and see where something comes out. It will let us figure that out real quick. All the chassis, information and breakdown. Just great information. And then here, of course, is something that is of great value to us as converters, is this is all the schematics. This is the starting system. It's got troubleshooting. Here's the charging system. Two systems which we're not going to worry about. The lighting system. Although we may want to steal some of the wiring that goes from one point in the vehicle to another. So knowing how it's routed, how it runs, the size of wire, that type of thing is good information. So anyway, again, let me reiterate that having a manual is very important. And then the other thing that you may have picked up in the video when we were loading and unloading the Rhino was that we wore a helmet and had the seatbelt buckled, so that if a ramp failed or whatever, you fall out, that you stay within the Rhino. Bottom line, safety. Whenever you start a project or doing anything else in life for that matter, my motto is that has been touted long before I came along, and that is safety first. And I subscribe to that. I've been in business for 38 years, and we've never had a serious accident, and it's because of that consciousness. So for those of you who are either in the middle of your own project or contemplating doing one, please put safety first. Think about things before you do them, because something can happen very quickly and have long-lasting consequences, if not fatal consequences. So, while we're on the topic of safety, let's talk about it a little more in depth. And a lot of times this just goes without saying, but we'll briefly talk about it today. So, a couple things that are important, and there's a lot of things. You'll see that in some of our videos, you'll see us wearing gloves and so forth. It protects you from a lot of knuckle busting things, and so we have latex gloves for working around certain chemicals and so forth. The older you get, the more you realize that it's not just a one-time thing. You're going to be exposed to it over and over, and so it's best to limit your exposure, and it's best to limit your exposure to other risks also. So have eye protection. Wear it, either safety glasses or goggles. I've got goggles at every workstation. We always have plenty of goggles, so there's no excuse for not wearing eye protection. And then use the right tool for the job. I've seen so many guys trying to jerry-rig something and do something without using the right tools, when the right tool was there to be had, just being lazy, and that's when you get hurt.
do not trust the jack. You know, I've never had one fail, but I learned that in high school auto shop, and I've always subscribed to it. And I'm not a big fan of jack stands. I have seen a car come off of jack stands. And so we use jack stands at times, but typically when I have jack stands in place, they're there as a backup for the jack. I don't like to use one or the other. I will have the jack in place and a jack stand. Or we use ramps. I like the ramps the best. They're very sturdy, less likely to have a problem. Somebody leans against the car and this and that, and it won't shift on the ramps like it can on a jack stand. That, or if you have a proper hoist. Insulate your tools. You know, the tools that you'll be using around the batteries, when you're connecting your interconnects and so forth. Make sure that you use insulated tools. You can use heat shrink, electrical tape, the dip plastic stuff, or you can buy insulated tools. But I've seen a video where a guy took a 9/16, well, he took I think it was a 20 millimeter combination wrench and actually pulled more than 2,200 amps out of a Calv 180 cell. And it did it for minutes. And it's just incredible the amount of energy in one of those cells and the potential that it has. If you shorted it out with a wedding ring or a bracelet or a screwdriver or crescent wrench or socket or something, that thing's going to just weld in place. It's going to heat up white hot, and it's going to do it right now. So don't take chances. Have a fire extinguisher handy. You know, they're really not that expensive, and we get inspected annually by the fire department. We only are required so many because of the square footage. I typically have double that many. I like to have one at each exit from a shop. We'll have them in the offices. In case something does happen, it's better to have it not to need it than to need it not to have it. And then be sure it's rated for electrical fires. So the other thing, the best thing in regards to safety is common sense. Think before you do something. Don't get in a hurry. Enjoy the journey, and take your time and be safe. So let's talk about some other things you need to think about before you get started. All right. Some of the other things that we'll briefly mention. In doing a conversion, I've known people that have done it outdoors. I don't recommend it. It's not going to be as much fun, for one, probably. I typically, when I'm doing my own projects, work before and after business hours. So it's nice being indoors where you have climate control, or a degree of climate control, and lighting and so forth. So, you know, dig out a spot in the garage. Some people have rented storage buildings, whatever the case may be. I'm one of those few people that actually have cars in my garage. And we have a 4-car garage, and we have 4 cars in the garage. We use other areas for storage. I'm a car guy, and I like my cars to be indoors and protected. So finding space to do a project would mean that I'd have to find a spot for a car. But I'm fortunate, I own a business and have a large shop, and so we just will have space to do this. And also with the Rhino project, it's a small vehicle. It's only 10 feet long, and so we don't need as much space as if we were doing a larger vehicle. Time. It takes a lot of time to do one if you're doing it for the first time and you want to enjoy the journey. And the Rhino, for instance, is going to take more time than a vehicle that we had engineered and done previously. We have to do everything from scratch. And like I said, we're going to bring you along and show you what thought and what steps go into doing that. I'm not familiar, I haven't done a search, but I just in the past haven't heard of anyone doing a Yamaha Rhino. I know that they do an electric Polaris Ranger, which is similar. It's more of a utility vehicle, farm vehicle. But anyway, so it's not like it's a kit or we have a guidebook to go from. We're going to use the basic principles used in the conversion to determine and decide how to do the Rhino. And so we're going to need a considerable amount of time. Most of the conversions that we do take 150 to 200 man-hours depending on the vehicle. And so doing a first-time one like this will probably be in the 200 to 250 man-hours to do this. It could be less. Like I said, it's a smaller vehicle, but this is going to take a fair amount of modification because we're not going to be able to just mount to a bell housing. We're going to have to come up with a mounting system for the motor. We have four-wheel drive, and so there's a lot to be considered on this. And so a little more contemplation time will go into this project. And then tools. You want to make sure you have all the basic tools at the ready to do this project. And like I said, safety dictates you use the right tool for the job. And the other is that any job is easier if you have the right tool. And your components, you want to do your homework and make the decisions on what components you're going to use. We have other videos that discuss components and component choices and so forth. And all that is part of a plan. You want to have that big picture plan of what you want it to do, what do you want that vehicle to do. And typically my basic plan is to create a conversion that has the same attributes as the gasoline incarnation. In other words, I want to go as fast, I want to accelerate as fast, I want to handle as well, I want to brake as well. And typically the goal is to do it as well or better than it did as a gasoline vehicle. And same way with the Rhino. We want it to be as good as it is as a gasoline version. The Rhino, as far as range goes, hardcore off-roading and so forth, you'll get down to around 60 miles. We've gone, I think the furthest we ever went was around 120 miles. And so it depends on the surface you're on, the terrain, elevation. It's carbureted, so elevation has an effect on the fuel mileage and so forth. So an electric version, I'd say if we could get a 60-mile range, that'd be excellent. So I want to shoot for 40 to 60. And so if it turned out like our commuter package does on our lighter vehicles, under 2,600 pounds and under, where we get a 50 to 60 mile range, that would be perfect for the Rhino also. So that's the plan. The plan is to have a four-wheel drive vehicle that's electric, that can go and do what the gasoline version does. Another thing we want to have is our wiring schematic, and I'm not talking about the factory wiring, I'm talking about the wiring for the conversion. You want to develop that, have that ready. And then you're going to need supplies and hardware, you know, the metal for your motor mount, your battery containment, all the nuts and bolts, screws, your 12-volt wiring, heat shrink, just a number of components and supplies that you'll need. And you'll find that you end up going to the hardware store fairly often. My habit is that if I go to the hardware store to buy a screw or a bolt, I pick up the box. And so over the years we've developed quite an inventory, and so don't go to the hardware store very often. I have my own hardware store that has been collected over time. And so if I need 6 screws and there's 50 in a box, I buy the box of 50 or 100 or whatever the case may be. And then I label the little drawer or the bin that we put them in, and you have it. So that's kind of just the general overview. Like I said, because we're starting with a vehicle that we have never done before, and we're totally new to, we're going to do some fairly extensive preliminary testing of the vehicle while it's gas powered. And we're going to want to know quite a bit of information so that we have a comparative, one for calculating how we're going to do the conversion so that it can do what the gasoline version did. If you don't know what the gasoline version is, it's hard to replicate. So we're going to do all that and very systematically develop a plan, and we hope you join us for this this adventure this year as we convert a Yamaha Rhino to electric power. This is just one of many projects that we have planned for this year. We also have some other activities planned. We'll be taking the Karmann Ghia to Laguna Seca and running it on the racetrack. It's not designed to be a race car by any means. It's a commuter vehicle. But we've had that car to 90 miles an hour. It's going to be interesting to see how it does in a track situation where it's under you know, power a good deal of the time. And so we've increased the handling by moving the weight, center of weight forward on that vehicle. It only has a 500 amp controller that's air cooled. So it'll be interesting. But you know, the way to see how it's going to do is to go and do it. So we're looking forward to that. We're going to take you for a ride on historic 17-mile grove in Pacific Grove, California. Some beautiful houses and scenery. We're going to do that in the Karmann Ghia. We're hoping to do a boat this year and be able to chronicle a boat conversion. And so, as well as some different vehicles. You've seen the Porsches and Volkswagens, so we're hoping to have some different vehicles go through the shop this year and be able to convince the owners to let us use it for video production purposes. And so hopefully have that to bring to you. And we're looking forward to an exciting year this year. So we hope you'll join us. And again, if you have any questions regarding a conversion you're working on currently or one that you're planning, don't hesitate to email us at info
at evforyounow.com, and we'd be glad to answer your questions. We're very prompt. I think the longest it takes us to get back, some days just due to scheduling, is maybe 48 hours. But typically we respond within 24 hours to everyone's questions. So we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.
Also, I'd have to buy a fire suit with a helmet. I did it. I was comparing.